welcome to my Gran Turismo 5 15th Anniversary Retrospective. Out of all the videos I've done in GT5, and will still do in the future as well, wink wink nudge nudge, I never actually ended up doing an outright retrospective on the game as a whole. Because when I started my channel in 2015, the game had already been offline for over a year, so it didn't really make sense to do it right at the beginning of the channel and kind of as it went on. Well, for the 10th anniversary, I did something completely different. If you watch that, it's not necessarily a positive video, but it was a worthwhile one nonetheless. But I'm not going to link it because there's some personal stuff in that. So I figured now would be pretty much as good of a time as any. Better late than never to do a retrospective on it. Kind of ironically, Gran Turismo 4, my favorite game ever, I've still not done a retrospective on, but I maybe for what's its next one, 25th or something down the road at some point. I don't know, maybe for that or something. We'll see. For now, it's not exactly the most chronological order, but nonetheless, I still have a fair bit to say as GT5, so I'll get right into it, folks. To start off, I played the prologue a fair amount. I don't really know if it was truly worth $40 of then money, which would probably be like $70 of now money. I don't really want to think about that. But it showed what was to come. The graphics were great, and there were kind of grassroots of online play, bare bones, however you can word it. There was bare bones even for the performance point system, and some of the cars did carry over. It also had a cool cheat code where you could finish the whole thing as well. So GT5 Prologue was good, albeit not a whole heck of a heap to do. But it still showed the potential for GT5 as a whole, especially because there have been E3 trailers for Gran Turismo 5 since 2005. Yeah, folks, if you want to look it up, the first trailer for Gran Turismo 5 was 2005. It was basically Gran Turismo 4, but with more cars on track. I mean, to some extent, that was part of GT5 when we got the standard cars on the tracks that returned from GT4. So it wasn't really a complete lie. But then there was also one that showed Grand Canyon. Luckily now there's mods for Gran Turismo 5 that have stuff like Grand Canyon. But this video is not going to be talking about the mods and stuff because I don't really have much first-hand experience for that. But the closest thing to mods I have first-hand experience with was back when people were hacking the cars and sharing them to where those on the friends list could still drive them, even if not directly owning them or they themselves hacking them. So that was a cool way to experience sort of kind of iffiness without really being red-handed or implicated in doing it. And I have videos of that as well. So I will kind of go into that a little bit. But overall, to when I got the game, where there's the 10th anniversary video on that of like the literal first day of it. But of getting the game at the time, it was probably the most excitement that I had of really about any game ever. I mean, Gran Turismo 4, to some extent, there's no doubt rose-colored glasses. I mean, over 20 years old now, so I don't really remember specifically my outright first experience with GT4 that I know of. I kind of sort of remember going into arcade mode with a Dodge Ram and like knocking the holy snikes at a little 15 horsepower cars from the 60s and stuff. But I don't know if that was my first experience or not, so yeah, I don't know. But I mean, I pretty much remember step by step of the first experiences in GT5, where I pre-ordered it from GameStop. I got the GameStop Joey Logano NASCAR. That actually, for whatever reason, had a little bit more performance points than any other NASCAR in the game, even when it got to 2011s down the road as well. So for whatever reason, that was just slightly better than the rest of the NASCARs in the game. Although you weren't really going to feel it or whatever in a lap, but if it came any inches, that's what happens sometimes in NASCAR. You want the pre-order one. Also, it came with the McLaren F1 stealth model. It had some aerodynamics and stuff in there too, so it's somewhat different than the just normal McLaren F1 of what you could buy stock. So that was interesting as well. So those were two very cool cars to start out with, and frankly, yeah, I remember just absolutely dominating everything with them. And I mean, obviously, that didn't make it super interesting with AI. And even at the time, if I was not a good driver, I mean, I made videos in the past before showing that even well into GT5, I was not good. Some time trials would be outside of the top 250,000 in. I don't even think we get 250,000 in any time trial anymore. So you can take that as you may, I guess. And I was well into GT5, probably even over a year into it. Even at the time, I realized that AI wasn't exactly the dandiest, so it's not like I was trying to make a competitive race with AI or anything like that. I just wanted to get through the career mode as fast as I could to get to online, and that was my first real experience of just screwing around online, of how GT5 Pro, or screwing around online in Gran Turismo. How GT5 Prologue worked is it was kind of set races. I guess probably the best example would be kind of how Drive Club did it, where it's rotating races every, like 5 or 6 of them. So, to some extent, like daily races, but after like those 6 passed, then it would kind of like restart or whatever, so you would have to wait for 5 races to get there. So that's not like what the daily races are. But they did kind of switch, I think, every week or so too, kind of like how the weekly races are too. So you could only do one at a time, from how I remember it, I think. But then you could wait 20 minutes and do the next one, wait another 20 and do it. But nonetheless, what I'm saying is, I don't really think, from how I remember at least, that you could just screw around in an open lobby. Whatever. So that was an amazing experience too. I remember starting GT5 and just having a whole heck of a heap of fun screwing around. But I'd say within 36 hours, probably at the most, I was already doing online, and that was outright amazing. By then, I pretty sure I already had Old Deadly, the one that's been probably all in all in most videos of GT5, where it was the 2008 Dodge Viper SRT 10 ACR that later on was tuned by Get It Done Boys for Special Stage Route X. That, I mean, I'm still going to vouch for, that was probably the fastest Viper for that particular Viper tune there was, and it was stable enough too to where it was extremely competitive there. But I've talked about stuff like that too. In general, for this video, I ain't going to go tons over stuff that I would have talked about in previous videos. I kind of reference previous videos as like a comparison or just for good point's sake or whatever, but I'm not going to reiterate the exact stuff. I've done plenty of stuff and just general dirty racing stuff. I did outright specifications of it, and again, there'll be more in the future. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge as well. So, not going to retread on that. But the point being is just screwing around. With that one, I already had a NASCAR, so the dirty NASCAR lobby started immediately as well. So Mix is just doing dirty racing at Special Stage Route 7, because the game didn't come with Route X like in the Viper, or doing dirty NASCAR usually at Daytona, but wherever, but it was usually at Daytona. That was outright amazing too, because that was really the first car game that outright just screwed around online. There were other car games that I played online, I mean, like Burnout Paradise, but those were usually doing like the online challenge, were somewhat ordered in a way that challenges themselves were chaotic. It was still in a, where you had to do it as a team cooperative type thing, or I think I played a little bit of Need for Speed Shift online, but I don't recall it having lobbies either, I don't think. I can't remember exactly how that works, but still. GT5 was the first, at least of how I remember, just being able to go in a lobby and just outright screw around And that was outright, for a racing game, and that was an outright amazing experience as well. I'm not gonna act like I truly really remember everyone's name I raced with over the years. Obviously, some stand out more than others, but from what I remember, it wasn't even really the people that I ended up racing with tons of, like, who outright started the game at the very beginning. And still at the very beginning, again, like within the first 36 hours, I still had outright amazing experience after amazing experience. It was insane just seeing the graphical level of the premium cars on the new tracks like Route 7 or Daytona and stuff like that, new for the game, whatever. And then, like, transverse or whatever on the opposite spectrum, getting a holy Snikey slammed into or vice versa, wherever you were too. Seeing all these amazing graphics and stuff, and then all the, well, quite insane physics and stuff. GT5 had interesting, dirty racing physics, and it actually had interesting damage model on some cars too. It wasn't the best, I'd say, even at the time. Forza has a bit better, has always really damage model. But some cars are better than others, and it's cool seeing how those worked too. For whatever reason, GT5's damage model was just straight forward better than 6. I don't really know what happened. They're the same exact car in GT5, would either have the same or better damage model than 6. It's weird. So yeah, that was just a weird kind of transition there. Just looking at the graphics, but also looking at the cars spinning out at 250 miles an hour and all that chaos, multi-class racing and stuff like that too. Frankly, I didn't even really try for clean racing back then. I didn't really know my exact skill level where the game just started and stuff like that, but I had a general ballpark to know that I wasn't really going to be able to compete for wins in clean racing, and I also didn't really want to get anyone angry into clean racing either. Just being a kid at the time, I didn't really want all that negative towards PSN name or anything like that, so I avoided it altogether for that time. But yeah, I mean, even that, it just this December 2010, just screwing around online was outright amazing. And then 2011 actually started doing competitive dirty. I mean, not gonna brag of the absolute talent level everybody or anything, but yeah, there were some competitive drivers in that, and probably the Nissel have told the stories before too, not retread. Tons of us, Carjan 3, started racing with him, and then that ultimately started Team Mopar, and obviously I've talked about that a whole heck of a heap, so again, just in short with it, there were dirty racers that were going into clean rooms and then purposely racing dirty and annoying everyone, so then Team Mopar started to essentially wreck the dirty racers in the clean rooms before they had a chance to get to other clean players, and then that ended up working out well enough, so the rest is history there, and I still have quite a few members of the Nissel team that was ran by an idiot on my friends list. I mean, that ended up working doubly well, because it wasn't a fallout of that team or anything like that. It was just the owner being stupid of how he went about stuff. So that was about the best case scenario that could have ended up going. Also, about simultaneously with that, and in some cases it went hand in hand, too, self-racing online started getting real popular. I mean, it was there from the start, from how I remember. I think that's right. It started getting real popular in summer 2011 or so, and just over the summer I had more time to play in general, even on summer vacation, so that got real interesting too, doing self-racing. I've done specialitating that in the past, and that's something that really should come back in modern Gran Turismo. Now that there's starting to be gradually more cars to the roster again, I think we could pull off self-racing again. And even with modern Gran Turismos, they can do double. Wait about it. They could do self-racing like they did in the old days of road cars. And then they could do like Group 3 self-racing, Group 4 self-racing, something like that. Maybe even make like a weekly race A be a shuffle race. Make it Group 3, Group 4 shuffle race. So then you get a different car each time, and qualifying and all that wouldn't really matter as much either. So that would be an interesting thing that I highly doubt would happen. So at least we have the memories of the shuffle racing. Or maybe to play GT5 online with mods or shuffle racing. I think that might also be a thing, but again, I get tons into it. But lo and behold, you probably see where I'm going with that. Combining with the shuffle racing and starting with Team Mopar and all that, that kind of ended up leading to what ended up probably being the most time and videos and all the things as well. Special Stage Red X, and also Old Deadly, like I mentioned. Dude, that was early 2012. While on paper Special Stage Red X wasn't super needed because, I mean, the vast majority of cars could go flat out at Daytona, its speed still carried outright amazing. I'd say the cars didn't matter in the turns because it was full throttle anyway. But on the straights, especially down that hill, cars were probably at least 20 miles an hour faster at Route X than they were at Daytona. So, even in GT5, there were some cars with no draft, just production cars that could go 270 plus. The Viper, from how I remember it, was quote-unquote only 263, but it was also really stable, and just kind of its aerodynamic type thing, like it was meant to be more of a track car and have downforce and stuff. It was real good in the draft, so it sucked up real well in the draft, so it probably had about as high of a top speed and acceleration once it was in draft any car out there. I mean, hard to say what the car's top speeds were in the draft because there's tons of variations with that, especially in some lobbies we run more boost and other stuff like that. But I'll put it this way, well over 300 miles an hour. 320, 330 would definitely happen. And that was even before Nitro, too. GT5 did not have Nitro. Until, right about that time, or even a little bit earlier, really, but right about that time, once it started getting real prevalent and mainstream among the GT5 community, was the hacking. That was to the point where some people even figured out how to mod more parts, like one stage up on a turbo, or one stage up on a engine upgrade, or even nitro. Somehow they figured out how to do that. I'm not really sure, but all that was kind of relatively realistic. It wasn't really all that big of a deal. What ended up sort of kind of ruining the game was stuff that ended up being insanely stupid that people took online. The insanely stupid stuff staying offline was amazing, and I did videos on that too. The 2,000 mile an hour World War II Volkswagen, the Swimmer Wagon or Keeper Wagon or whatever that one was. That one was amazing. It could literally go off the hill on Route X as a jump, and it would jump to the turn. Like that hill that's like half that way down the front straight, and there's a video of it too on the channel. Real old video. That one probably at least 10 years old now. Jump off that hill that no car, like in the game, like even now, Tomahawk would get air off that hill, but with the modded thing, get so much air off that hill that it could probably jump. I would say that was probably 4-ish miles would be my guess to the turn, and then like in some cases too, it would fly beyond the turn and then get reset too. It would literally go out of bounds. It carried so much momentum, it would break past the invisible wall there. And that was just the one that I had. There were tons and tons of different. But the sad part too is they ended up being used online. I've done specifications of that before too, and people documented tons of time. You could even go on mygranturismo.net like right now and see it. So many of the online time trials and just open lobbies and all that were ruined by people using the insane stuff online. it kind of made a new niche of people just using the more upgraded style cars, as long as they were honest to what they use and stuff, and you'd still do horsepower limits and stuff. So to some extent, the horsepower limits stuff would work for open lobbies, but you could also add more grip and stuff to the cars too that wouldn't be picked up by what limits they had in the menus that a host could make or whatever. Instead of point being, it's like a realistic upgrade or whatever, where a car maybe gains 100 horsepower and has nitro. Not that big a deal. That kind of is added for a little bit more nitro online stuff like drag racing or whatever it would be. But then when you had I think the most that I saw, it wasn't really all that drivable. But I remember there was an Audi R8 that had 1.6 million horsepower. Million. It wasn't really drivable. It even with four-wheel drive, and no matter how tuned, it had tons of wheel spin. So, I mean, it was still insanely fast and beat any other car in the game. But compared to something like that swimmer wagon or whatever that was tuned to just be the best it could, not just pure horsepower. Yeah, there's that. I mean, there's one specifically. I remember there was a time trial at Autumn Ring, the full layout. I can't remember if it was forward or reversed, but or the specific specs, like what performance point it was, but it didn't end up mattering because it was one with a Volkswagen bus tuned to the point of when it braked, the brakes were so powerful, because again, that wouldn't be caught by a horsepower weight thing of how powerful the brakes are. The driver, like the actual model of the driver that you could like change the suit of and stuff, head would go through the front of the bus itself. I had pictures of it that might have ended up actually going on the 30,000 followers festival, maybe. But I didn't end up doing a video of that. I'm not even sure if I saved a video or not. I'd have to look on that. I'm pretty sure the pictures and stuff like that are out there, because that's what ended up winning that entire time trial. So there's proof of it, especially like go on GT Planet and like go to time trials of GT5 and then search like Autumn Ring, and then you can go from there and you can find it pretty easy, because one of them are outright won it with the head sticking out of the front. Granted, it's not like the Volkswagen bus has much of a front to it, but still, the head sticking out was the stupidest thing I ever saw. And that outright winning time trials with the insane grip and all that, where it didn't even really have to have any skill for that. You just tune the car to the bulk of what the other regulations would allow, performance, horsepower, weight, all that too. So yeah, that was real stupid, and that was definitely a negative of the game. Like, Peak Gran Turismo 5 Fun Online was, I would say, I mean, as much individual fun I had because it was such a new experience. In 2010, peaking, like, looking back without the, looking at it as a new experience, just looking at it as pure fun, it would probably be about mid-2011 to mid-2012. I'd say it was probably the most fun of a general online experience. Lobbies where the hosts would be more strict and stuff like that, or the ones more straightforward, the RT Mopar, yeah, that would work better because we knew each other and stuff. But just a general lobby, kind of after mid-2012, it fell down pretty cotton picking quick with the mods and stuff. But obviously, too, that wouldn't affect the shuffle racing, so that probably made shuffle racing even more popular. So there was that, too. You just do shuffle racing, clean, dirty, whatever, and then you could avoid that completely. But it also wasn't updated with the shuffle racing either. There was the same cars in there when the game released as it was when the online ended in 2014. So you could look at it like that, too. But here's kind of the opposite to that. While the body cars and all that, when used online, were definitely negative, there were some hosts and all that out there that could do it a lot better, and it ended up quite fun. Granted, there's still some videos of some individual instances and not going so well. But in general, from how I remember it, the best hosts were, there was the whole RPM Dirty NASCAR team, and that was before there was a slight time Richard Petty Motorsports that ended up being Legacy Motorsports now, so it was before that. I don't know what RPM actually stood for. Probably something motorsport, I would guess. But all those dirty rooms were good. Dirty NASCAR usually. And they would have a team too, but I mean, that works for NASCAR, no big deal. They're racing dirty and dirty with teams. I mean, that's fine. It's NASCAR. That's that win. So they would be real strict with the modding and stuff, and they could kind of tell. Too, not just with the horsepower and weight stuff too. They could kind of figure out grip hacking and stuff like that because they specialize with the NASCARs. So those always went well. Juan Pablo 42 would do kind of more a mix of shuffle racing, a mix of Rams. So obviously I like that one. And kind of more lower performance point dirty racing. Probably no more than about 600 or so performance point. And then there were Juice 190 lobbies who said a lot of things that wouldn't exactly be as well received today. I'll put it like that. I mean, I made a joke before. People say the Call of Duty lobbies were hectic at the time. Were you ever in a Juice 190 lobby? Yeah. So, there was that. But nonetheless, he did well getting rid of the hacked cars for the most part. All of them, whether NASCAR or Pablo or Juice, all of them did good about making sure that no one went backwards. Nobody had awful lag to the point that was ruining it. Even at the time, with my terrible internet, like at the time, it wasn't even 1 megabyte, I don't think. Or maybe by the end, I think it was 1 megabyte, but I think when it started out, it was half a megabyte, like in 2010, and then 1 by the end. Could handle it. Other people would say in general my car would kind of jitter around and stuff, but wouldn't have like lag, it would just kind of jiggle, like it wouldn't really affect the racing, it was kind of just more a visible thing. But I didn't see much lag on my end, so it worked alright. The cars that were lagging, everybody see that. But the point being, in GT5 online, even from my terrible internet, just simply worked better than GT6. There were times when I played GT6 online with better internet than I've ever used it in the rest of my life, too, at college. Being insanely fast. I think at least 75 megabytes. I'm pretty sure UK, or at least at the time, advertised it like it would be the fastest college internet in Kentucky. I think they literally advertised that. So maybe some businesses could get a bit faster, whatever, at the time. And I mean, that was 2010s for the most part. So I'm sure it's faster now, but still fast as I read. And even then, GT6 Online did not work so well with the online connection. I mean, when it worked, but a lot of times it didn't. So, yeah, GT5 was much smoother online too, just the general connectivity and all that too, which was weird because a lot more people played GT5. I mean, maybe they just simply spent more money on the server back then. I don't know. That was weird. I think it ended up like GT5 outsold GT6 by like 2.5 or so times, I think, somewhere around there. So, yeah, that was weird experience. Well, but even the offline stuff was fun, too. GT5 offline was the beginning of the seasonal events, which kind of what ended up morphing into the weekly challenges now to some extent. I think GT7 is even advertised as a quote-unquote live service. GT5 was the same thing, folks. I mean, we had the seasonal events pretty early on. I don't think they were there right at release. Especially, too, because GT5 did not release with performance points, which was weird, because they were wasn't really that big of a deal. There were performance points in GT5 prologues. That was weird. It didn't release with performance point. It released with that weird level system that no one really liked, but it didn't end up being all that relevant once the performance points were added, so whatever. But still, the point being is that with the seasonal events, that they would have a nice range of stuff to where it was as much or more varied than what we get in the weekly challenges now, I'd say, and they were seasonal, so they went for longer. I would argue the rewards are better. Probably doing the seasonal events were about the second best you could get, other than one timing out with the time and drift trial. Which I gotta say too, the time and drift trials are slightly easier on average in 5, and that's me saying that my skill level in 5 ain't what it is in 7. It's my skill level in 7 what it was in the past. You can take that as you may. But I think we can all agree that at least I'm better now than I was 2010. We can agree with that. Am I at my peak? I don't really feel like talking about it at the moment. But I ain't as bad as it was in like 2010 or something. But the point being that even back then they were a bit easier than what I consider they are now to try and get gold on. But the way they did it back then with the diamond drift tiles was a set thing you got. There was a set time or drift score for bronze, silver, and gold. And to me, that's way better than what it is now because you see it right now. In a time trial that's still going, PD had to reset the whole boards because people were wall riding and stuff. And you saw that time and again. Anytime there's ever a time trial, and they still have never fixed it to this day from GT6 onwards, at Willow Springs Streets of Willow, people can go well beyond the cones and then turn back and go for that. So the point being is, when GT Sport onward time trials make it to a way that it's based on what the top time in the world gets is stupid. Because the top time in the world has a wheel worth thousands upon thousands of dollars. They've done thousands upon thousands of miles. And probably some shadiness a few times in there. A few time trials in there too. So, yeah, to me the system in GT5 or 6, however you want to word it, both of them use the same thing there, were better. And that was just icing on the cake. That was what you could do one time and get the money now. With the seasonal events, you could redo and redo and redo, because even with weekly challenges now, it's still kind of not really repetition. You can do the same races over and over, but it's only one-time reward for the 100,000 credits for winning one race, with 300 for winning or 200, so it ends up being 300 total thousand. Winning 3 races, and then the 6-star roulette ticket on top of that for once you win all of them. It's only a one-time thing. You can't then repeat it for the same prizes again unless you have a different account. So, it was even better upon better with that, too, because it wasn't just that the prizes were better in terms of the economy and stuff. You could keep on doing it again and again, too, with specifically the seasonal events. So that was great, too. Plus, GT5 actually had a login bonus to where the more days you logged in, the more money you got to a certain extent. I think it might have been 5 days to 200% credits. Don't quote me on that. It might have been 6. One of them it was, if you logged in 5 days, you got a 200%. 5 days straight, you got a 200% bonus. One of them was that. And also, there was the last performance point your car had relative to the set performance point, you gain more money with that as well. So, of course, there was tons of exploits in there, especially with the seasonal events being against AI. I mean, people would use the hacked cars tons, and frankly, I did too. There'd be a hacked Red Bull as best handling thing in the game. I'm pretty sure I was able to do a 20-something second lap at Tokyo R246. That was a specific example I remember. And it was a 400-something performance point event. And somehow that Red Bull actually ended up having negative performance points. So any car that ended up with negative performance points, I'm not even going to try and act like I know the calculations there. Maybe some mods had a thing in there where you could literally just manually put in what performance point it is. I don't know. I never did the hacking itself. But the point being is any cars with negative performance points, so using modded cars, whether it's -1 or negative 10,000, I think the Red Bull might have been literally negative 10,000 or something, would be automatic 20 million credits. So you could do a however long race. I think the shortest ones usually ended up being 2 or 3 minutes. You get 20 million credits. So also just doing that, money was no issue at all. Plus, GT5 with the used cars too, the quicker you get the stuff done, the quicker the used cars would refresh. So that was kind of an annoying thing in my opinion. Some people like the used cars more than others. To me, the GT5 way to go about it was kind of annoying. GT4 had the better setup where it had like the classic, the 80s, the 90s, 2000s ones. GT5, they're all just kind of lumped together. Later on, we did get a like best of exclusive thing. I can't remember the exact name of it, but that was an online only thing. So it put the cars that people requested or rare stuff. Sometimes it would take the standard models that were only exclusive to GT that were cars that started out as premium and 5, so they didn't have their standard from GT and then they would put them in there retroactively, like I think the Ferrari F1 cars and stuff like that. Maybe the Mercedes 300 SL, I think it might have been one as well, don't quote me on that. And a few others. So those are rare. I think way back in the day I actually did a video on it, back when my memory would have been better. Well, that's a real old one. That's probably at least an 8-year-old video. Can't even remember the name of it. But yeah, it seems like I remember talking about that in some video or another. But yeah, that was well after the fact. That was almost one of the last updates I ever did, I think, with that online thing. But yeah, the seasonal events are great too, because then, if you wanted to, you could do it truly competitive. You could use the low enough performance point thing to where both of you got good money. You could repeat it and then see how low you go and still win the race. I think it was GT6, which basically had the same general thing. It was a 450 performance point one. I was able to win it in a 291, I think, performance point Toyota Prius. It's literally one of those things with my skill level. I tried to detune it to 290 and couldn't win it. I was able to get once with 291, being able to block and all that stuff too. So yeah, that was GT6 example, but still GT5 there. So you could play it however you wanted. You could use, as long as you're friends with someone that shared a hacked car or you did it yourself. I'm not going to judge. It was 15 years ago. As long as you didn't use it online. Hacked cars, there's that. So you could get the money extremely quick, or you could do it as where it's competitive race as possible, or just use the maximum performance point, or however you want to do it. So that was cool as well. And just the events, like once the game came out onward, were cool too. They didn't really have an outright missing challenge thing like GT4 had, like missing 34, that notorious one and stuff like that. But they did have somewhat of a version of that where they had just different themed events. Like there was a Top Gear themed event, a NASCAR themed one, and a kart themed one, and all those were cool. I mean, some worked better than others. Like there's one just time trial with Mercedes at Nürburgring, and I mean that was just kind of boring. But then with Top Gear one, it was a stupid fun Top Gear challenge. It was swimmer wagon or keeper wagon or something like that, and you would, the cars themselves go real slow. Part of it too is there would be one cutting across the entire track and smacking the other out of the way too. So it's also a crash avoidance thing in there too. Remember why you going real slow, so it wasn't exactly as fun driving. The slowness helped to get through that crash avoidance too. So just seeing all that chaos was fun too. And that seemed like a good, stupid kind of Top Gear-esque challenge on the Top Gear track. So they made good use of the Top Gear track. It was glitchy. I mean, some people could figure out how to glitch their way into faster time trial or whatever it may be. I think there might have been like a grand total one time trial that went glitchy, so sometimes that could be used online for iffiness and stuff like that. I remember occasional things when that would happen. So Top Gear Test Track wasn't exactly the most popular online for competitive racing or anything like that. But still, their attempt to use it in a funny way, I'd say, worked out. Those events were good. There's one actually called the Gran Tour, well before Gran Tour existed. That was like when it was still the peak of Top Gear. that where it would have point-to-point things too that were quite cool too. Because GT5, no, they're pretty close to end off the video. GT5 had track editor too that you can still go in there and use. You can boot up GT5 right now and you can use its track editor. And it wasn't amazing or anything like that, but it's still a usable track editor, so that's better than what GT6 had, and why you can't really do custom like signage or stuff on the side, and you can't have an exact mileage or anything like that. You can still pick of how kind of like a rally thing where 1 is a tight turn and 5 is a barely a turn at all sort of thing, with how you want to do the turns, and you can pick how wide you want individual parts of the track and stuff like that. To some extent, you kind of do elevations. It would show an elevation overlay thing. So depending on where you put the track in individual areas, like ASO and EFL and stuff, those areas I can't really pronounce nor remember perfectly. But there was also a snow one, there was a kart one. It wasn't perfect by any means, but it's still very much a cool thing. I'm glad they had. So that was an interesting thing too. They can still go back and do, unlike GT6 is. That's the point GT5 right. GT6, back when it was usable, especially back when people figured out some exploits and stuff of it, the GT6 track editor, when it was at its peak, was better than GT5, sure. But GT5 still works. No online needed with that. You can just go into it. The point with that. There's also good implementation of B-Spec. I guess you can make an argument of which one you liked better, and we're getting one soon. So there's a lot of arguments there. We're getting one soon in GT7. I think that's one of the ones that's paid only. I'll get to that when I get to that in the future. You'll see about that. Not to get all negative and stuff. But the point being is some people like GT4s better, whatever. I'm not going to make a true argument on that because each had their own positives and negatives. But one of the big positives of GT5's B-Spec, it wasn't just its own mode, like where you could actually have the B-Spec drivers gain talent as they raced, which was an idea. Again, some people like that better. But to me, the best implementation of it is you can actually use it online, and then because races could go up to 16 cars, then electricity just went out, so that the thing's gonna beep and the dog's gonna bark. Ignore that. You might not even hear it. But where it's 16 cars down the races from like GT5 Prologue on, that made it to where, because each person only had, I think it was 5 B-Spec drivers, so then you could have 2 friends and get their 5 and then another 1 in there too, or however order you wanted to do it. And you could race everybody's B-Spec drivers together and everybody got credits from that. So that was a passive way to make multiple people credits at any given time, and that was a cool system that I've never really seen any other game do. Most other games don't really even have something like B-Spec. I mean, Forza kind of has the systems that drive for you that's kind of more meant for those with disabilities, but like a B-Spec thing like Gran Turismo, I have no other games really. That was that, no, and even Gran Turismo does it way that GT5 did with online things. So that was a real cool thing too. And then obviously GT5 has a lot of things that like all the rest of Gran Turismo's had. I mean, it had the same sort of races like GT4 did in classes, and sometimes they would even use the same like graphic for what it is. Like the Sunday Cup would be the same graphic used in GT4, probably even GT3 as well, and GT5 and stuff like that. It had 24-hour races, not paid for. We just in the game. So that beats out GT6 Sport and 7. We're not paying for them there. Too. And it had like licenses like all the Gran Turismos. stuff like that. So a mix of the stuff we come to expect with plenty of unique stuff in there too. That was a one-time only thing that's definitely come back, like the usage of B spec, the self erasing, the track editor, things like that. And just amazing graphics for a time, especially the premium cars, and so many of the tracks added then that we still don't have back. Something like Special Stage Route 7, like I mentioned, or Capering, and so many. That's for sure. There's a lot that could end up coming back from GT5. So, yeah, overall, I mean, I've said it for years now, GT5 is probably either third or second of my favorite games ever. I'm kind of on the fence of if I put it above Grand Theft Auto 5 because online went real bad as time went on with GT5 and it got real greedy. GTA 5, and obviously we're still not even to GTA 6 yet, so maybe now I can put GT5 ahead. GTA 5, just because as time went on it got worse, maybe. But yeah, I mean, GT4 is still my favorite game ever, but with Gran Turismo 5 still being at least my third favorite game ever. And I'd say, all things considered, it is my most played video game ever. I'm pretty sure it is. GT6 was split between two different PS3s, or one of my cards. I'm not 100% sure how many miles in GT6, but I'm almost certain GT5 did not track practice in online racing. So, like any online that wasn't a race itself, it didn't track the miles for. So, a lot of that is screwing around in lobbies. That was probably at least 20,000, 30,000 miles there, too. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure GT5 is my most played game ever, and you can't see hours for play games on the PS3 either. But I wouldn't be surprised, yeah, GT5 is my most played video game ever. One of my most favorites ever. And I'm sure there's even individual little stuff that I'm forgetting too. And of course, tons of big stuff that I did videos on too, like RAM and individual races doing special Daytons and some drift stuff too, like the front wheel drive drift cars, which is more of a negative, and try to find that too. Obviously, there's a lot of big stuff that I've done some videos too, and I'm sure it's even miscellaneous little stuff too. And this ain't even count like GT Academy that ran along with it too, and things like that too. But nonetheless, I'm sure y'all will get what I'm going with it. GT5 is most certainly worth the on for many years to come as well, if the mods and stuff might eventually get in it. But even for 15 years old, there's still so much of it that no other game even has to this day. And yeah, most certainly worth. Yeehaw!